Oseo.
Oseo.
Stop time and kill the story of the time I stopped time to kill the killer of time in the story of my life. Stop and I will kill stops in all stories with timeless rhymes. So this wound in the end begins again, and now my blood is free to flow into that great flood of our mother in mud. I'm continuing from last week with my theme, water, water woman. The waters are the honey of all beings, and all beings are the honey of waters. The radiant, immortal person who is in the waters is the seed of that which flows. This is the immortal. That's from the ancient Upanishads. And that's the way that I'm introducing this theme, continuing with water, water woman, and principally right now, Athena. You heard of Athena, of ancient Greece, of Athens, Athena of Athens. It's like that. And to see how that comes about and how that relates, I'm going to do a bit of the story, this ancient story, that is Jason and the Argonauts. Now, this is something almost archaic, this story. And it has, undergone serious redactions in later times, which has introduced such familiar features as Zeus and the Golden Fleece, and Medea the demon, and all of these things that have taken place in a later time. Basically, in the Mediterranean Sea, as far as the oldest name I can find, it was called the Great Deep Green. And in the matriarchal culture, the ancient woman's culture, the Mediterranean Sea was her uterus, and everything around it was related in that way. And there are basically two people there. The Pelasgians are the sea people. That is from the word the Pelagos, meaning the sea. So those are actually the early Greeks. And gradually, people down from the north, the Danube, the Achaeans, they came in and they brought Zeus. Zeus is an Achaean father god kind of guy. And that gradually overtook everything in the Mediterranean. And also, they changed the myths and the legends and everything to conform with that. But the islands in the Mediterranean Sea still remain, for a very long time, very conservative and never accepted a father god, no patros, and still maintain the feminine. In my college studies, this period was called the palace cultures. So I have that kind of basis here. So I'm going to start with this. Jason, Yasin, he is an ancient figure from the country of Ypres, which is the very west side of Greece, the main Greece body, facing the Adriatic Sea. And very much north of Ypres is the ancient, they think the most ancient oracle of Dodona. Later it was made the oracle of Zeus, but not here originally. And above Athens, which is in Attica, there's a country there, Boeotia. And it's a kind of almost like in the center, although it has the coastline. And there are these mountains, the Pindar Mountains, above it, to the north of it. And there are two great rivers that flow down into that country. And now the king wanted to reclaim the marshland, into, let's say, cultivatable land. So in order to do that, then there had to be, some kind of a waterworks conservation project. And the Greeks, were acquainted with the Egyptians, who were really very good engineers in this. They had done it. So, that's part of what's in it. In fact, even the country Thebes in Boeotia is actually named after Thebes in Egypt. So you can see how close the relation was. So, in order to do this project, Peleus was the uncle of Jason, and he's kind of given that way in the story, so we'll call him the king. So he's enlisted Jason to find and get the permission from, quote, the deity, the goddess of all waters. All waters. And that we're giving this name, first of all, as Athena. So that's the project. The project, you must go to Athena and get her, okay, sanction or whatever it is for me to do this water project. So that's what starts this. And that this is moving into now the story called Jason and the Argonauts. And to take this voyage, there has to be a boat. And this boat is built by a person named Argos. And the name of the boat is Argos. But the name Argos for the boat is really the name of a mythical dog, the dog of Odysseus. So that's how the boat got its name. And so if you can go way up here, and you can see that picture there, I replicated this. I have located this that was painted on a large broken piece of pottery, coincidentally in Iolcus, which is the very harbor, it means harbor of the moon, that Jason and the Argonauts launched the Argos from. So I am sure that that's what we're looking at, that this is that ancient boat called the Argo. Now let me mention at this time that I think it was in the early 60s that Hollywood made a wonderful movie in color, Technicolor, of Jason and the Argonaut. And they really did a lot of homework for it. But at this point I'm mentioning, even though they used a Greek ship of some period, that ship had sails on it. At this early time, the ships don't have sails. Sails didn't come into the picture until we have the story of Icarus, who made wings to fly to the sun. And that brought about somehow how ships have sails. Also, I have to say, this story that the movie really drew itself from is by an ancient Greek writer, I think about 22 or 2300 years ago, and that's Apollonius of Rhodes. Rhodes is the island off southern Turkey, and he had composed this story that the movie really drew upon. But even at that, there's an earlier period. Now the Black Sea is where this ship and the Argonauts are going to go. At that time, the early time, this was a large freshwater sea. Instead of naming the Black Sea, it was called the Euxine Sea, and it means the Sea of Friendliness. And the ancient ship before the Argos is called the Ship of Renewal. So that this was all something belonging to the really earlier culture there. So we have some of that. In the movie, as the ship has left, the harbor of the moon, it goes up the Strait of Marmot to the Marmot Sea. This is where Troy is, where the Mycenaeans, in another later time, attacked Troy, launching from the same port. Whatever, 1200, 1800 ships, and so forth, So that's where Troy is. Troy is a strategic city of the Hittites that is located on this passageway, the Strait of Marmot and through there, which eventually would go to the Black Sea. And that was really the reason for the attack on Troy by the Mycenaeans, because obviously the Trojans controlled it. Anyway, that's a little bit aside. But in the movie, while the ship is in that strait, Poseidon appears and causes a big earthquake. And, the ship is very much in danger. After they've made that movie, it has been discovered that this really did happen. That what separated the Black Sea from the sea that comes in from the ocean over the salt water did break down. And it did break down, and it did raise the water and flooded cities or towns around that sea, the early sea. So the movie, did incorporate this into it. And the movie takes in a lot of myth. So I have to give a little bit of line of this movie, because once that the ship is there in this sea, where they're heading to the south. It's basically, the south of the Black Sea. And these people that are there, just recently President Biden called attention to these people who had been persecuted here in historical time. What was their name? You can't remember. It's happening right now. But this is where the ancient city of Colchis is. Now, Colchis is an ancient Egyptian colony, actually. And there's somebody there, you can call him a king, but he has a daughter, and she's Medea. And she's like, a herbalist. She's a chief healer. And herbs seems to be the specialty there. So the movie has done a wonderful job in portraying these people as those kind of Egyptians. They were kind of Hamitic people. But on the way there, on the sea, the Argos comes across debris on the water, and it's the debris from a reed boat. In other words, that's what's floating on the water, and among the reed debris is Medea. And they rescue her. They rescue her from that. So this is the first indication they're encountering an Egyptian culture. The reed boats were the boats used on the Nile. And so eventually, he gets there, to Colchis. That's what it is. Now in the redaction, this has all been changed into a pursuit for the Golden Fleece, which has nothing to do with this story. I should say, to begin with, once Jason was enlisted for this project, he had to go and get his permission from the Oracle of Athena, which is in Dodona, the very north of Epirus. And she is, we call her the goat goddess. And so up here, I have put a Yaki carved mask of the goat to stand for Amalthea, because this is significant through all of ancient Greece, for one. And because of her, what later was being called the Golden Fleece was originally the goat skin, the Aegis. And that Aegis continues, in spite of the Golden Fleece in the later story, to maintain itself throughout the story, all the way through to Athena. So that's very relevant here. And once that Jason has, gotten ashore and they've gotten together, and everybody there in this country of Colchis, and however he is conveyed that he is searching for Athena. Medea is the sister of Athena. And so in a wonderful scene in the movie, this shows Medea sitting like in a throne, and above her is the Hecate, the frog goddess of the Nile. So up here on my painting, I have the frog. And of course you know the relationship of frogs to water, obviously. And the scene of Medea sitting that way, she's wearing a huge mantle, a palace. And so that's totally significant in this. So the movie directors really did a wonderful job in the portrayal of this. Now, Medea gives Jason some kind of an infusion, potion, you'll call it, in order to dissolve, in some sense, his male ego. Because there's no way that, his ego can go to, behold, a meeting with who we're referring to, this goddess to be, Athena. I'm saying to be because she hadn't gotten that name yet. You're going to see why. So, in some story, Poseidon takes the whole Argos and the whole crew and whisks them over there to, it's the very eastern edge of Libya. the Nile River comes up and forms a huge delta with many rivers in it. So very much to the west of that delta, there is this was all called Lower Egypt. The capital of that is Sais. Sais is the capital there. And so to the west of that capital is the edge of this great lake that covered all of North Africa. This is long ago. Because of the Ice Age in Europe, the moisture coming down across the Mediterranean created this huge lake. And this lake was called Lake Triton. Lake Triton. And so the goddess in this lake is called Tritonia. So that's her early name that later became Athena. How did they get Athena? Because where Jason encountered her, I have made this painting. This is the painting of her apparition to Jason. And this, I have replicated this from an actual artifact of her from Crete. I'll say more about that. I'm doing just the storyline at this. So this is the way that she appeared to Jason there. And somehow that's how he secured this, whatever I call it, permission to go ahead with the water reclamation project in Boeotia. So basically that. When the Romans and the Zeus and all these people took over the Mediterranean and changed everything into a patriarchal, pessimistic stories, they made Medea, they demonized her and made her a poisoner instead of an herbalist, for instance. So all of that. So here we have done that story sketch here, and here with this replication I have of a real artifact, who are we seeing here? We're seeing that she is a mollusk. That's what's being portrayed here, that she is a mollusk. The shape of her arms and out like this is, an amphora, because the amphora was very much a symbol of her. You look here, this is an amphora, for instance. And so that is, totally the apparition of her. She is a mollusk. Now, to sort of understand why a mollusk would become a goddess, because I'm going to call it the culture of the Mediterranean was totally nature of the water, the nature of the sea. And that's what I'll show you over here, go way over here. This is Claudia's painting. It is an exquisite painting. And it's very much in the sense and the spirit of these very early people, the Pelagian. And down in front of it, to go with this is a very ancient vessel here, and this is a Minoan vessel from Crete. And you see the dolphins on it. And this world, or this kingdom on Crete, was from 5,000 to 3,000 years ago. And for a long time, until recently, it was thought that the invaded people from the north had, somehow invaded, that kingdom and destroyed it. But recent evidence has disproved that, as it had more to do with a kind of a tidal wave that occurred because of the volcanic explosion in the Mediterranean. So you just kind of leave it at that. But Claudia's painting, together with this, is a way of showing that the nature, the culture of people in that Mediterranean had everything to do with marine life, with the water and everything. And so Claudia's painting and that, and there's the snails in it and so forth. And so that pretty much, carries over the kind of theme that I'm doing here, because this mollusk was is very, very ancient, very, very ancient. And to refer to something like that, I'm saying right here in East San Diego, there's a place that now is called the Salton Sea. That is a recently made water, but it's a basin that has been there for millions of years. The last time, and the Gulf of California used to come all the way up to, say, Indio, like that, and the silt coming down the Colorado River eventually silted it in. So the last time that water from the sea, from the Gulf, came up there was, about 4 or 5 million years ago. And that left this huge body of water which had a very tropical life environment, really, really unique, and that lasted for a very long time. And moderns now refer to that body of water as the Imperial Sea. And over the millions of years, there was times, went down and refilled and so forth. So until they knew all this, the archaeologists knew all this, now they referred to the pre-Salton Sea as Lake Cahuilla. Just that. Now, the people who once lived there, it's an American name for those people, Cahuilla, actually. But their name for themselves is the Muruita. That means that they are the cultured people, or that they are the ancient people there. For the most part, they have been removed from this region and moved to a reservation called Pala, curiously, there. And what I'm saying about these people, that their predecessors, have come from Libya. Their language shows it. Why did they come there? Why did they come to this ancient Lake Cahuilla? Because of the mollusk. Because of the mollusk. And here, this is a fossil of such an ancient mollusk right here. It's like a complete envelope where the shell has eroded away and left in the sandstone the image of the shell, the mollusk. So very much see that, so that we can go here and we see this shape. This is a bivalve mollusk. Now stand aside, and here I've displayed, this is what the bivalve mollusk looks like. That is in the artifact. Incidentally, there are many frescoes in that world of this minus the person around it, just this itself. Now, in this culture, her culture, these are called her thunder shields. So these mollusk shells are her thunder shields. And I'm interpreting, of course, because I accurately replicated it, that's what these are. They're like thunder clouds, to say, so that she can be Thunder Maiden. In the ancient world, before women were made into mothers, because mothers meant that the mother was a fallen virgin. So they did not turn, in the ancient time, the virgin, called the maiden, into a mother. Athena was never a mother. She is forever virgin. Parthenos, there. And we continue this culture from out here all the way up to, in Nevada, Pyramid Lake. Up there in Pyramid Lake, also, you have an ancient lake, Lake Lahontan is what modernly they call it. And there were two lakes side by side. One the Americans have drained, so now it's a dry lake, and that's called Winnemucca. And the lake alongside of it, the Americans have called Pyramid Lake. So this is the most ancient water still left from this early time. And there's also evidence of these people who have come from North Africa. We're calling Libya. And here, this shield that I've made here, this is painted on tufa, and where it's located, if you can make this out, this is my painting. This is a very large painting of a very large edifice that we've dubbed the Sphinx of Pyramid Lake. And there are paintings all in this that relate to this. Next to this is independent, a rock formation 4 feet high that is shaped like a conch. It turns in, you know, that we would say that. And that is painted on the inside. So the name for this is the Palladium. The Palladium is her thunder shield, and this is what is being depicted. This painting is my painting of the same subject. This is my, you say, apparitional painting of Lamia. The name Libya is the Greek rendering of her name Lamia. This is Lamia. Here is her scallop shells and the scallop shell for her crown, like that. And so this is my most affectionate painting that I feel in this vein, in this subject. This figure here, I am making her as another personification of Lamia, and meaning she is a water woman. That's why I have the scallop shell there for her. So that gives a, you know, a personification, I'm saying. Now that the Greeks, again, we're doing this very basically two Greeks. The early Greeks are the Pelagi, the sea people, the people who live in a world with water all around them and relate that way. They founded the city called Athens. Athens, where Athena is the patron of her. The other people who have come in from the north and brought Zeus, they're the Achaeans. They're the patriarchal and so forth. They eventually call themselves the Hellenes. Basically, because you can see in history, Sparta and the Peloponnesa, those are the Hellenes. And they are in conflict with the Pelagians, who are Athens. That's the two differences. Eventually, these get more muddled than clear. So Homer, whether he was an Athenian or that he wrote, you know, his epics in Athens, at least, you know, that's very, very possible. But at any rate, if we go over here, this is a miniature statue of a colossus that was in Athens. Above Athens, there's a huge bluff, we can call it, a huge upraised bluff, where the Athenians built this huge building called the Parthenon. And in the Parthenon, the sculptor Phidias, he made this huge colossus statue of Athena. Now she still bears the mollusk. She's called Pallas, Pallas Athena. Pallas is the name for the mantle in the mollusk. The mollusk has a mantle. And this becomes used almost like beauty everywhere. Like beauty surrounds her, like that's her mantle. At the same time, also from Amalthea, she has the aegis, the goat skin. And so here, I've actually adorned on her because what's being called the breastplate is actually the aegis, the goat skin of Amalthea, which also figured as having a Gordian knot, the Gorgon, which in this version, she's holding her thunder shield. You're going to see it, you know, oblong way, but on that shield is the head of Medusa. Medusa is a gorgon. A gorgon is the guardian of the ages. You know, put it that way. So that's still in operation here. Here, the figure alongside of her is Victory, Nike, or Nike, Nike there, so that she's also called that, Athena Nike, or Pallas Nike, meaning victory. She's been somewhat militarized here, but she still is bearing the features of the mollusk. And to carry that even further, augury were people like soothsayers who specialized in interpreting the flights of birds. In the Greek states, those soothsayers always had their back to the south, which is Libya, and always looked to the north, like that. So always honoring that the birthplace of Athena is Libya. Now, just to mention there, where the name Athena come from, again, it's another Greek rendering, where Jason encountered her, Tritonia, that became a shrine. And the name of that shrine was Het Neith. Neith is the Egyptian name for her. Het Neith meant literally the shrine of Neith. In Greek, it ended up Athena. And then it's debatable whether it was already in Athens and that fit in, or whether they named Athens for her. Debatable in that. So, to go along with that, here, down here, you see this shape of a bird and a woman. This is also a rendering of Athena. This is from the island of Rhodes. Rhodes is a Greek island, a large one, off the coast of southern Turkey. I have it here for two reasons. One, the augurists recognize her birthplace there in eastern Libya. And the other, because Rhodes, Apollonius of Rhodes, has recomposed the story that I'm telling you about. And in Athens, her symbol here is the owl. This is the Greek owl here. And so this was a way of also relating Athena to the patron of augury, basically that. And that piece here is replication of an ancient vessel. It's a perfume vessel from Rhodes, from the Isle of Rhodes. And the Isle of Rhodes is extremely, extremely important, but I'm not going to do all that today. And I think that I have all of this sense for the water. I just have this piece up here. This is just like saying that that is a Greek goddess, and it's the spring. We're at the 1st of May. So I gave that, spring bit there. So for now, may you all see, a new view of clams and mollusks and snails, and all of these were out here in the ancient Lake Coyote, and the people who have lived there, again, they have stemmed from North Africa. Other people have come from there. The Zuni, the language of these people is recognizable to people who know languages, Hamitic. These people are speaking Hamitic language. The people called Zuni, which are actually the name of the Ashui, which is the Libyan name for them. Anybody who knows that knows that. And I should also say at Pyramid Lake, Winnemucca has these huge inscriptions, and I've called that the Temple of Lamia. Vivi and I, in recent years, the very southern end of that lake, discovered more tufa, are these huge formations made of some kind of carbon calcium. And this was all the result of the ancient lake after the ice ages. And it left these, huge structures that I've depicted here in my painting, for one. Well, we located some more at the southern end. And why I'm saying this, because on one of those very, very large panel next to an indentation into the rock are Libyan letters. It's not the only Libyan letters that I have found in the region, but these are Libyan letters unmistakably. So all this was actually Libyan. Libyans are Berbers. Berbers are actually the Barbara, meaning the sons of the bear, and the bear meaning the constellation, following the constellation. Like saying that that's their destiny. Most of the people have come from the Mediterranean, including the Yaquis and so forth. The only people who have come from the other side are the people known as Apaches and Navajo. They are coming from east of Afghanistan. You know, but the emphasis here is that these people, now they're living in a desert, or they were. The region out here is the desert, but in earlier times it wasn't. And I'm saying these people, whether they came to Lake Kauai or they came to Pyramid Lake, there is a destiny or something that they find themselves in. So we would need, the American fable of history would need to be modified to allow other people here before the English pilgrims. Putting it nicely. So all of that I really feel very, very close to and very involved in, and have done considerable study in all of these related subjects. Now I'm going to end with a poem from Mary Oliver, who's really, really good at helping me. And she titles this Whelks. Now whelks are snails. So I've just emphasized, the scallops, the mussels, the mollusk. But in Claudia's painting there, you see that there she has the snails. We'll say they stand for the whelks. And so she has them all in here in this poem. The snails, the clams, the oysters, all of these are all found in fossil forms right out here where now is the Salton Sea. Right? Whelks. Here are the perfect fans of the scallops. Qualogs, those are clams, and weedy mussels, still holding their fruit. And here are the whelks. Whirlwinds, each the size of a fist, but always cracked and broken. Clearly, they have been traveling under the sky blue waves for a long time. All my life, I have been restless. I have felt there is something more wonderful than gloss, than wholeness, than staying at home. I have not been sure what it is, but every morning on the wide shore, I pass what is perfect and shining to look for the whelks, whose edges have rubbed so long against the world, they have snapped and crumbled. They have almost vanished with the last relinquishing of their unrepeatable energy back into everything else. When I find one, I hold it in my hand. I look out over that shanking fire. I shut my eyes. Not often, but now and again, there is a moment when the heart cries aloud. Yes, I'm willing to be that wild darkness, that long blue body of light. Thank you.